Hi, Mo.
Hey.
So I didn't thank you for the previous one in the way. Maybe I did. I didn't listen to the episode, so maybe. My episode 1 of this thing was with you, and I really, really appreciate it. And I think a lot of public or group work and growth work within myself is thanks to you. And
You're welcome. It was definitely
super grateful. Yeah, I'm super grateful, and it's fun to be back and do this again. And I know we wanted to, and we spoke of it, and the Zoom thing is like the remote recording is helpful. It's easier, it's quicker, so I'm glad we can do this. I'm particularly surprised that we're on today, given that you're coming right off a retreat. You had a workshop, a retreat last weekend, and not a 2-day, a 4-day, a full weekend of work. So we didn't actually schmooze off. We didn't schmooze about it. So I figured I'll hold the conversation. So we actually do it while recording, and maybe besides me squeezing out the juice of your retreat for myself and your takeaways and points, I would love to start off with sharing, I guess, for our viewers, for the people that know me and that know you and they weren't at this event, so people can understand what you did, what the takeaways are, how to integrate it to life, what you learned maybe personally. If you can elaborate on that, that'd be super fun.
Okay, so I think we were talking about doing this last week, and I think doing it this week, in a sense, is not better or worse, but I think there's more opportunity in doing it after the fact than before the fact, because now I could speak more. It's a 4-day breathwork retreat. 4 days with participants is not 3 days with participants. And it was a wild, wild, wild ride. There's so much. I think there's more. What would be helpful is more direct questions. But there was just an amazing amount of vulnerability, an amazing amount of openness. And I think as men and as people, as we give ourselves permission, as I give myself permission to be open and vulnerable and more open and more vulnerable and acknowledge a vulnerability along the way, there's even more opening to acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean approval. Acceptance doesn't mean that it's okay. But acceptance means to be in a sense of receptivity of the vulnerability and allowing myself to be in relationship with the vulnerability without necessarily judging the vulnerability. As you and I know that in these spaces, many of us are not vulnerable because we're too busy judging it. So
judging the vulnerability.
So
the two things that I recently encountered, it's always been far for me because I was very close to people that go to retreats and do work together, like emotional, vulnerable work together. So the two things I recently heard is exactly those two things is why people don't want to go to a group thing. One is I don't want the vulnerability. Mm-hmm. It's like I don't want to open my thing to others. And the other piece is specifically, it's like when I do that, I have this ability to accept. Mm-hmm. And people find acceptance to be an escape. It's like, I'm not going to do what I need to do in my life because now I know how to accept. So I accept myself the way I am. What a great thing. So on those specifically these specific two, powerful benefits, which I know and I've grown so much of, like for people that have resistance, what can you share about specifically now coming off the retreat, and you just did that, the vulnerability and the acceptance piece. How's that work?
There isn't this imaginary trophy that you get for being able to be vulnerable with other people. There's an opportunity, but there's no trophy. Meaning some people find that group work is extremely intimidating and they don't want to do it. And for me, that's totally fine. The nature of vulnerability is that there are certain things that get shared in very small, intimate groups. There's certain things that are not done with groups. There are certain things that are done one-on-one. There are certain things that are shared with one-on-one. Chazal is also very clear about it. And at the same time, much of what keeps vulnerability as scary, I guess, is shame that gets surrounded by it. That we cast a lot of vulnerability in shadow because it's not necessarily socially appropriate to deal with it in the normal day-to-day. So to go into a ritual space, to go into a workshop, to go into a quote unquote ceremony circle, to dive in and allow vulnerability to flourish and emerge organically, I think can be very, very, very helpful. It's not necessary for everybody, but it could be very, very helpful. And acceptance is not necessarily, does not mean that I'm not going to move. Vulnerability and acceptance are just two ingredients of the process. As what we did discuss is, as we learn to accept ourselves in relationship to the vulnerability, I then start to refine my relationship to my inner I can learn to start to trust myself more, because I'm going to need to move and go back into process and back into the real world. I could accept whatever vulnerability I want to accept. And at the end of the day, Monday is going to come. I'm going to need to go and be there for my wife and be there for my daughter and be there to pay my bills. And I have other things that I need to do besides accept my vulnerability.
Deal with the gas company.
I have to deal with the gas company. I have to deal with my stocks, whatever it is. And to deal with that from a place, to live life from that place where I'm not being bogged down by my internal judgments around my vulnerability, my rejection of my own internal experience. Go pay your bills while you're busy rejecting yourself. It winds up being difficult.
On the workshop, on the retreat, we work on it's a unique space to feel vulnerable, to let myself show vulnerability, which means a place where I'm uncomfortable. I usually close. And then I learn to accept it, which means to not carry the shame or the judgments around it. I don't have to be defined by this emotion or this feeling. So now let's play it out in real life. The useful way to integrate it is, so let's take an example, like a gas doesn't work, or I have an issue with my land. Let's take an example like that, or on my end, I need to, I don't know, collect money from someone and I'm embarrassed or shy, or I need a favor in order to get by, whatever it is. I need to face my finances. So the way it integrates is dafka with this. This could be a skill.
We need to define acceptance. Acceptance, essentially, I'm paraphrasing the different definitions, is I'm willing to receive this as enough. And if I'm willing to receive this as enough as it is, then the opportunity comes, can I start to move? If I'm in a vulnerable spot where my gas is not working, or I have a gas leak and it's going to cost me $6,000 to fix it, or I'm going to have to move from my apartment and find a new place, that is a vulnerable spot. That is a money expense. That is a sense of displacement, especially if you got a special landlord that is cooperating or not cooperating. It's going to put you in a sense of vulnerability, and vulnerability would be defined as a state where there's a possibility that I could be harmed. There's a possibility that I could be hurt. There's a possibility where I'm not going to be in control. So can I learn how to receive myself in that state of vulnerability? So yes, acknowledge the vulnerability, which is one step, and then I could accept myself in relationship with that vulnerability. I'm being able to hold it. And once I'm able to hold it, once I have a container where I could hold it, I could start to move a little bit more further. I could do something about it. I could trust myself enough to do something about it.
Yeah, maybe I can do something different than I've done till now. It's not to say that if I close vulnerability, or for some people, it's not to say that anyone that's not vulnerable with themselves or accepting of their vulnerability, they're not as functional, but the choices are different when I can relate to it in a less constricting way than when I'm like, okay, I'm feeling vulnerable, I'm feeling open, I'm feeling that I can get hurt, and I'm going to go and I'm accepting that. And that creates a certain, I guess, to me, it looks like a superpower. It gives me this ability to be more of myself because I'm not spending my energy containing. I'm not spending my energy hiding. I can talk to the landlord. I can make the phone call. I can call my accountant.
Correct.
I can process. I can look at the numbers. I can do the reports. And I understand that this little feeling I have inside is vulnerability, and I accept it. And that's...
Mm-hmm. And the vulnerability could be a feeling. It could be the data that's going on. It could be a story that I'm carrying about myself. It could be the desire that I have not actually acknowledged. It's multidimensional. Vulnerability is not one thing and not no thing. It's many, many things at the same time. And as I'm growing, I realize that the depths of my vulnerability is really a deep well. And like the things I'm vulnerable about now, I was never able to be vulnerable with 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. So I could either judge myself that I wasn't vulnerable back then, or I did not have the, in a sense, the circle of trust or the circle of acceptance inside of myself to also be kind to yourself. I could judge myself, which is a vulnerability around my lack of vulnerability, or can I learn how to accept the fact that I just wasn't where I am and allow myself to be where I am? And if that means acknowledging a deeper sense of vulnerability that I couldn't yesterday, awesome. Awesome. That's growth. That's progress. I think you and I know that there are things that you and I are able to talk about now that we weren't able to talk about 2-3 years ago, because you and I are now, we're more ourselves. And if we are more ourselves, we can be more us.
What's wonderful is that the discomfort and the cold sweat and the assumption that I'm not safe if I share certain things, even with myself, is not there after a while. So I can train myself into a relationship of safety with my own thoughts and feelings. I don't have to live, okay, here I don't go, this I don't say, this is not okay. And with the years, like you say, after 3 years, 4 years, 12 years, 15 years of learning to accept those vulnerable spots, there is a certain openness to life, to people, to effort, to the next step.
I think the pivot is going to be, once I learn how to work this acceptance muscle, I learn how to a deeper muscle, which is trust, where I can learn to really trust myself more. That yes, I could get into a negative thought pattern. I could get into my spin. I could ping pong inside of my own head. I could feel really, really bad some mornings. And at the same time, there is a baseline that I come back to, not because I am special, but because the I is able to come back to itself. And as I'm acknowledging my vulnerability and I'm practicing a sense of acceptance, there is a trust that is being built. And I think that is something that I can't say that we taught in the workshops that in the past. I don't remember it really being taught, maybe because I didn't know it myself. We heard it, just trust yourself, or trust the process. Yes, absolutely trust the process.
Like, but what is the trust made of?
What is it? Yeah, exactly. What are the ingredients to trust? What does it mean? And how do I find myself in that? Can I trust the process if I'm not trusting myself?
You're right, because when I don't know it myself, and I want to trust the process, the feeling is vulnerable. I'm at risk. Now, can I make that safe so I can take a step?
Sometimes the monkey mind is so strong that I could knock myself off that trust very, very easily. I think that was a big thing for me when I would spin so hard, and I sometimes do. But I could say I want to trust myself, but I'm thinking about 5 other reasons why that trust is not true.
So I have an actual real-time example, and we spoke about this before my last retreat, which is registration. Everything in my head understands the power of a no. It's like I almost want to get a no so I can develop a relationship with it. And I still get knocked down every time I get a no. Like I put in the effort to either register someone or sign someone up to something, and I do it with all my heart. And I really do it with all my heart because I'm not thinking of getting the yes. That's how it feels heartfelt. And I'm doing a good amount of, okay, this is for me, but it's not really. I'm playing with my own thoughts into a place where I enjoy connecting and making the offer. And every time without fail where I get the no, I get knocked down, but really hard. And I got one this morning, and I'm like, I know the answer up here, but on a nervous system level in my body, I guess that was also something I wanted to ask about your workshop. It's like, okay, so there are concepts. I know it in my head, but I'm still knocked down every time I get the no.
So I think there's the word that's coming up to mind is resiliency. Now, before doing these Hineni things, these Hineni workshops, they're not things, they're workshops, they're retreats. It's pretty awesome. I never went into the field to market and promote and enroll people. And let's say I've reached out to 500 people and I only got 10 of them to say yes. Does that mean I have 490 no's? Now, no, 490 of those people did not say no, but let's say 25 of them did. Let's say 50 of them did. Let's say 100 did. And then multiply that by 4 different workshops. That's a lot of no's. That's a lot of people saying no to me. And what I realized pretty quickly was that those no's do something to my system. Now, the vulnerability is I'm learning how to receive and accept the no. And instead of personalizing it, can I actually allow myself to feel it, acknowledge it, accept myself within it, and come back to a sense of trust? Do I get wrapped up in my head about it? Absolutely, because we're human and we get lost in the smallness and the cottonistic of mind in the moment.
So conceptually, I get it. And I also understand that even if I don't get it in this moment, my next step is to let it, because there's nothing I can do. My question is there a so first of all, it's not a question, it's a share and understanding where it plays out for me today. But I guess the question is, what is a practice, like a takeaway from the teachings that you just taught, that I can actually do on a physical nervous system level when these conflicts happen? It's like, or for any listener, like there is the awareness of surrender. There's the awareness of not, this is a vulnerable feeling. I gotta know, and it hits certain triggers. And I also understand that I want to let go, and I'm good enough no matter what. And Fakir, I actually like the no. I support the no. Like there are plenty of no's that I suggested. It's like a better fit for you would be this other therapist, or I gave someone your number yesterday.
Let me make it. Let's take it out of. I have an answer, but let's take it out of the workshop sphere and make it more applicable. Let's say I'm dating and I receive the no after my second or third date, or let's say I'm with my wife and she says no. Can I practice accepting myself even when I'm feeling the no? What
does it look like? What does it look like on a physical level, an emotional level, not only conceptually?
First, I need to actually learn what that acceptance is. And I look at it. I don't know how to explain it on a physical level so much, just because when I think of acceptance, I'm learning how to hold both. Humans are designed to hold complexity. I learned that whatever I'm feeling can be held because I can hold both. I can hold yes and I can hold no. And it's not, I come back to me. I come back to my breath. I come back to my sense of acceptance. What does it look like physically? I keep on going. I keep on going. It's my response that's really going to show me where I am. It's my response to the other person. It's also the response to myself.
Like what I put forward in the world.
What is my next move? What is my next move forward?
That's really gonna anchor how I resonate, how I feel, how I relate to my own feelings.
And I remember in the dating field, like I would get a no, and it would suck. It hurts. It hurts to be rejected. And then realizing, are you actually being rejected? Fine, in the dating scene, are you being rejected, or are they not in a space? With your wife, is she tired, or are you just not are you being rejected? Those are two different things. But when I'm relating to reality where it's all about me, so it's like I'm the one that's liable to being rejected. Well, in reality, it's not all about you. Most of these people are not interested. They're busy. This guy has a chasana. This guy is bar mitzvahing his son. This guy doesn't have the money. This guy doesn't really care about what you have to say. It's got nothing to do with you. You are. I realized this after I got engaged to my wife. As important as I am not that important.
Excellent recipe for marriage is to actually be a little less important and make the people in my life more really important. They matter. And when I put myself just a little bit less of the center, and I put my kids and my wife a little bit more as important, and then doing the opposite with the rest of the world.
My wife said this to me yesterday. Like I'm not going to add to the drama inside of your own head. You have full permission to beat the crap out of yourself if you want. I'm not. This is yours. You either deal with it or you don't, but this is yours. I'm not going to add to your head noise. So I try to not add to my own head noise when I start feeling it. Do I feel it? Yes. Do I have this incessant trust inside of myself, where this is going to end? I'm curious with you. I took a little bit of a stance with this last workshop where I'm not going to go crazy with enrollment. I'm not going to push. I'm not going to be overly invested. I'm just going to do my thing and coast, and whatever happens is going to happen. I reach my minimum. I get a little bit of extra, this and that, whatever. enjoy the process and do not get lost in the details, because I already saw myself 3-4 times already get lost in stress it. I knew it was going to come, but how do I dwell in a place of allowance? How do I dwell in a place of letting go? I know I trust myself. I know I accept myself. I know I have a relationship with my vulnerability, but am I willing to just allow the process to unfold, which is going to be the fourth step: the vulnerability, the acceptance, the trust, and then the letting go. Let go and allow. Just allow the process to work itself out. And I did. And it was hard sometimes. And then it was quite simple. It was quite simple. Hasidim, anyway, in a general sense, they wake up. Don't ask them in the beginning of the week where they're going to be at the end of the week.
Yeah, I had, with my last one, I had some people that literally wanted to sign up a night before and book tickets to Mexico and leave their work and life. And
they'll do it.
I know the design of what I've done doesn't work like that. So I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically about acceptance and about vulnerability, is that the ability to be vulnerable and accept the vulnerability is not that I accept myself as small or limiting or not do what I need to do or not show up for my family. It's exactly the opposite. It's when I have this feeling of vulnerability, like someone told me no, I know how to hold it and be a grown up with it. And then what you said, which I think is really cool, is I know that I've done it, I guess, right or wrong by me, by my own highest self. I know how I've done it by what my next step is going to be. I'm not going to close off and hide. This means that acceptance was more of like a cop out. I'm hiding. So that's not acceptance we're talking about. Ultimately, maybe it's part of the process, but ultimately, what I have to show for myself in my life will determine the kind of acceptance that I'm doing. The one where I'm hiding and I'm not actually doing, or the one that I'm putting myself forward with the ability to accept this heavy emotion.
Because if I'm rejecting my vulnerability, it's not going to flow well. If I'm in a space where I'm rejecting my vulnerability, it will not flow well. Most of the people that you and I know that are compulsive and addictive, a lot of that drama comes from being at war with the vulnerability. So if I'm in a space where I can actually accept the metzias, and the vulnerability is just the internal reality. Vulnerability is the internal reality. Am I willing
the
to
emotion?
be in a place
Vulnerability
of
is the feeling. It's the feeling. It's what I feel.
It's
the emotion.
So the way I worked with it, it's vulnerability could be the data, it could be the thinking, it could be the feeling, it could be the desire, it could be any of those things. If I'm in a place where I can just receive the vulnerable mitzias, and then I could start working with it without qualifying it, being at war with it, trying to change it, trying to manipulate
It's a whole other me. It's a whole other age of me. It's like I can actually step into life when I can do that.
Age of me. I like that. It's a whole other age of me. Yes.
When I can do that, it really hits with the work that I've been doing, specifically on myself, which has a lot less to do with changing my feelings and doing a turnaround or an opposite, and a lot more spending time. I'm talking about it on a nervous system level, like to actually regulate my nervous system and feel safe and solid is simply the practice of letting the feeling be. And I dafke when a negative, this person that I spoke to about psychedelic integration, I think I called you right after. I'm like, Mo, do you remember this thing? How did I ever forget of this? It's like there's certain parts of me that I can only work on while I'm triggered, while I'm feeling not good, right? So I spoke to this guy about psychedelic integration, and we're talking about stuff that comes up, and he's like, yeah, we want it to come up so we can actually do something about it. And as long as it's not kicked up, it's not stirred up, there's nothing I can't actually work on it. So with the vulnerability, part of what I've been really trying to do is to not necessarily do anything as a practice, so I can actually let it. How much longer can I sit with it? And it sounds like you've been doing a lot of that work with people and with yourself.
I'm curious, how did vulnerability, acceptance, and triggers come up on your workshop? Because I imagine if everybody's taking the time, they're flying out, they're going to Cozumel, and what triggers come up in a retreat that way, like that? When I go to Cozumel to go work on my stuff, what stuff am I working on?
So on my retreat, we've been doing a good month before of group work. And the last one we did one Zoom meeting and 1, 2, or 3 one-on-one conversations of 20 to 30 minutes of really, really looking at life. And the future ones, I'm going to build I'm in the middle of building a 2 or 3 month program. So what comes up is what's happening in life, and I dafke bring it with me, right? I started a retreat knowing that I need a financial review on last year. I know I need to look at my business. I know I need to figure out if I stay with this accountant or not. I know my relationship with so-and-so sucks. And I also know that I have vulnerabilities like pain or stories that I'm blocking. So I come in, here, this is it. Let's put it in the room and let's look at it. And the first piece of what we've been doing is really, really to build the muscle and really regulating nervousness that I'm allowed to look at it. And we spend hours doing that in all kinds of forms, through conversation, through journaling, through his bodhidus of going on wanders in nature, and guided meditation. You know, the guided one day that I used to do, which is 4 hours of sitting with it. You know, so we do, this is the first part that we really did. It's like letting, and I had no idea until now that the work that you've been doing so resonates with this ability, the muscle to be with a feeling. So much self-work and workshop work is about changing it. And it wasn't, I don't think it was initially intended to change. It wasn't meant to be, okay, we're going to feel it and now we can change it. We're going to step into it. What do I want? And now I'm going to change it. But it just evolved into that. A lot of self-help became a bypass. I don't have to feel the pain. And I think there is a lack in a grown-up when I don't learn to actually be with the feeling. You know, to actually be with the emotion, to be with the story, to just be with it, just hold it. And what you said is to accept it. That's what you mean by acceptance. Doesn't mean agreeing. It doesn't mean I don't want to change it. It means that I have the muscle and I can regulate myself and be with it.
I think feeling the feeling is definitely an ingredient. It's not the whole, as Simcha would say, it's not the whole bowl of wax. It's not everything. And I think part of not change work, but more growing up work is realizing that, yes, feeling the feeling is important, and the moving forward and learning how to let the feeling go and occupying a place of surrender and trusting yourself again through it. It's like the feeling is a wonderful avenue to gain insight, awareness, heal, all that other stuff. It's not all of it, not by a long shot, because the feelings are just it's a feeling, and if I attribute too much meaning to a feeling, it can start lying to me.
So acceptance is sort of the piece that can take me to the next step.
I think an acceptance is a greater sense of maturity with the feeling. It's like, it's one thing to be able to be vulnerable and acknowledge your vulnerability, which is courageous and it's huge and it's necessary. And I guess in a sense, a higher level, again, I'm not saying what I'm saying is gospel. It just makes sense like this in my own head, is the sense of acceptance, where that's the twist that doesn't wind up being taught too much, that I could actually learn how to be accepting of my internal experience. And as I'm doing that, I'm working that muscle, it's like, well, there's a sense of trust there. I'm building a relationship with the I when I'm doing that. And then I'm like, wait a second. So I am really I, and I might feel certain things, but I am the one that's feeling them. And, you know.
So from all the breathing you've done, can you share a short, is that, you know, Huberman has the 2-breath, nose inhale and mouth inhale. Is there a Moe breathwork technique that you can share?
So no, there's no Moe technique, but Mo Nyman was actually on the retreat, and he was phenomenal. He brought a twist where to do that double inhale, that and to hum out, and to actually allow that, and just to keep on going.
Wow, that's cool.
And to bring that sense of calm back, the vibrations of that hum is, for me, is very yummy, and it winds up inviting that calm. On the retreat, we did a couple of rounds of all that priming stuff, just to feel what it feels like to feed that fire inside. And then there was a lot of that other calming type of breath. But I did also, which was, I think, really phenomenal. We did this around trust. We did the double inhale and letting go. And we did about 3 different cycles. One with, I want to trust myself, I can trust myself, and I trust myself. So to really start to play with the different affirmations and the headspaces. When I'm dealing with nose breaths, there's a lot more focus, because there's a certain level of, I want to focus, I think would be the great word, to keep it in the nose, and I'm not, but I'm a little bit more disciplined, and to really focus on that sense of intention. I think what I learned from you, I believe, it was a bit of a twist from the Wim Hof when it came to the cold, where you really went into the I'm okay, and breathing into that place and just diving into that wisdom, and then going into the cold with it. That's something that I still received from you, and I'm still very, very grateful for.
Thank you.
I don't remember it was a while ago.
How do you foresee integration coming off something like this?
The 2 ways that my workshop was described was, it's a 4-day mikvah, where you come in, you go into the mikvah, and you come out, and then you go back to living your life with at least more of a secure baseline to who you are. And the other way it was described as a 4-day ayahuasca, which is
clarify, there was no psychedelic served.
No, no, there was no formal psychedelic circle or anything like that. But medicine, it's definitely a twisty, timey-wimey space. And in terms of integration, I really empower the people to do it themselves. It's very much, if you build it, they will come. I'm very much available. My groups are very much available. And if somebody wants to do a check-in group, an integration circle, I'm very for making it happen. But it's a space of empowerment, where if you want something, make it happen. To get lost in the trying to upkeep different circles, different workshops, and then check-ins and all that. I did it for a very long time, and I know I don't want to do it right now.
Yeah, you also have some leaders that join. Like, you have people that have been enrolled almost, for 5 years, for 6 years, and they're ready to help people.
So somebody wanted it. He said, I have a space available. I have people interested. I said, wonderful. He may run it and go and do it yourselves. I could watch it from back here and provide whatever insight and coaching and all that. That's totally up to you.
How do you foresee, or how do you relate? We spoke about this privately many times, about the many different offerings, practitioners, healers, so many people who moved into or want to move into a leadership role. How does that affect this whole community we're in?
So there's a big part of me that's very grateful, and I'm kind of sitting back and watching the show, where I've been in it long enough where I could kind of just, I'm watching it. It's like there was the show ER that came on that ran for forever. I think it was like about 20 seasons. So in certain ways, all I'm seeing is the newest season of inner work and healing circles and workshops. I think it's very, very sweet. I spoke to Simcha about 2 or 3 weeks ago, who's the founder of Call the Shofar. He was one of my mentors, and I love him very much. And I told him, you have no concept of what rippled from the work we were doing 10 plus years ago, which really started, 20 years ago. So I'm enjoying the different ripples. I think everybody deserves the opportunity to express themselves, to heal, to find what works for them. And the invitation is to really do it responsibly, and to realize that as much as some people know what they're talking about, some people do not know what they're talking about. There was a discussion specifically about Frumkeit and halacha, and references to Hashem and Mother Earth and her Mother Earth and Hashem. And for me, I'm very clear. I'm very clear on that there are things that I don't know, and there are things that I do know, and that certain things are basic when it comes to the halachics of certain spaces. and the rest, let's see what happens. It's going to be a very interesting season and upcoming season. What do you think? I know this is like a peering into our conversations that we have on my drive home.
Yeah. The way I look at it is, so there's a follow-up question to that about making a living doing it, like more of a business, not spiritual perspective. But on the spiritual side of things, and the way I look at it is through the wisdom of Rabbi Dovber Pinson, which I've probably shared this thing with you. And I really look at it that way, and it really helps me to put a perspective on where we're going, which only complements what you just said. So what he shared with me is something interesting. He said historically the way growth worked was there was this everything went to hell, and this one person came and saw something different in the world, and generally it was love, light, acceptance, and that person was the next leader. And that happened in Yiddishkeit and Judaism. It happened in very, very different communities, and they were first mocked, and they were the outcasts, and then they became the next big thing. And what happened afterwards is they had followers. And then after the followers had followers and micro leaders. And then the big transformational guy dies. And then the next generation is Shvach. It's not him anymore. So then with time, it crumbles. And then there's another round of that. And historically, he explained to me how it happened in Yiddishkeit, great dynasties, and then how it happened in the secular world in different empires. And today, none of those things exist, meaning government and it's politics. It's not anymore true leadership. It's not anymore heart-centered. So it's almost systems, institutions, corporations, even if it's nonprofit. It's a lot of institutionalized. However, what did change is, and changes historically how transformation works, is that it's small groups that empower each other. So there isn't this one person that everyone needs to strive to, and then it all collapses 100 years later. Rather, it's small groups, and that is sustainable because everyone arises. And it's not built with this thing that maybe someday I'll be a someone. I'm a someone 1 week in. And that's how I see it. And I also see the future of self-work. I was going to ask you this, but I guess I'll piggyback on what I just said. Is I think that as a parnasa, as something that I cover my bills with, I learned also through my last retreat that my vision is small groups. I used to look at Tony Robbins, and that's like that the goal. And I noticed maybe that's Tony Robbins' goal, and that's what he gave to the world and to me. And maybe there's something else that's happening and unfolding, which is really cool, that everyone becomes a leader. Everyone finds their language. And it's also a way to actually design programs for that.
There's so much to unpack. Well, I mean, we're living in a time, like, it doesn't need to be said, because, if you know, and you know. So we're definitely in a time of red pills, and people are a lot more awake, and people are learning a lot more. So, and it's one of those things where even just by a look in the eyes and almost like a recognition of humanity that is going on now. And it's like, all you need to do is drop a name, and you're like, oh, okay, fine. He's not watching the same TV show as much as he's tuned into the same channels that I'm tuning into. And that's a spectrum. So I think that spectrum has very much expanded, especially since COVID, especially since everything that's been going on. So there was a YouTube video on that Rav Yisrael Biton commented on a Manis Friedman video, where there's this whole thing of God, does God need us? And some Israeli rabbis don't really like it so much, because how could you say God needs us, yada yada yada, and Manis Friedman is Manis Friedman, so you could say whatever he says and backs it up. So he brings this whole video, this 20-minute video of how he's basically answering up the chakira of the argument of what, does God us, does God not need us? And he understands, where is Manis Friedman coming on, what psukim are behind it, what about the other ones? And I don't comment on YouTube. I comment on a lot of other things, but barely comment. But on YouTube, I don't comment. But on one thing I did say It's like commented on this, and it's like, I appreciate the clarity to the clickbait, where there was a bunch of videos that went up that Manus Friedman is a heretic, Manus Friedman, whatever. Now, I'm not one to, I don't need to clarify what Manus Friedman is or isn't, but I do know clickbait when I see it. So what I said is I appreciate clarity to the clickbait. And they're like, well, what do you mean? What's the clickbait? The video or you know,
criticism,
the video that it's about? I said, listen, whoever knew, whoever learned, whoever learned, knew the answers to whatever he's saying. Whoever didn't know, now knows. So I appreciate that there's clarity around the issue.
That's how you see this whole world.
That's how I see it. I think whoever is going to eventually know, truth will eventually emerge. You know, MS is MS. It's not going to escape. I could post about MS. I could think that I'm talking about MS. Whether it will eventually emerge. So that's just the nature of things. So I don't need to. I could be who I am in relationship to that process. Or not. So I think with whoever it is that you're going to work with, does their MS sing with your MS? Now, it could very much be that their MS is a delusion and it's singing to your delusion. And that is a very much a possibility.
It doesn't mean that there isn't growth with that.
It doesn't mean that
there is vulnerability, there's power, and there's movement. And I guess that's the beauty of having so many little groups. That something steers up and moves one way or another.
So, and it's funny, recently I took a 10-week course with someone I never worked with before, but they were licensed and they were Bruchli Moskowitz. I did her psychodrama course. It was wonderful. It was very, very, very wonderful. She tailored it for healers and coaches. I took it. It was Sunday mornings. It stunk because it was Sunday mornings, and it was phenomenal. And I received a lot. And then I took another course, a hypno-psychedelic course, where it was just like, oh, okay. It was from this real liberal hypnotherapist from the city that just like, you know, he's extremely liberal, but happens to be an amazing teacher. So I think very much learn how to receive from wherever it is that you're receiving from. I think you and I spoke about Teal Swan a lot. I really appreciate her ability to put language to things. So, and then you have certain tzaddikim, like Itchamai Morgenstern, like I can't believe I'm saying them in the same minute, but it's all encompassing. So how can I actually take different facets from different places and incorporate within it?
So you have less of a sensitivity that even if you don't like something about them, you can take out the juice and not idolize them. And I don't necessarily, I do that, I think, and specifically with someone with Teal Swan, it's like as soon as I find something, I'm like, I don't want to hear anything. And you don't. That's a big difference between us.
No,
like I take in more. It's like
going back to holding complexity. This guy is an unbelievable neurosurgeon, and I'm a med student. I don't care about his politics right now. Just teach me the skill. I don't. Again, I'm not. That's me. But there are plenty of people that wind up getting sucked into it. Personally, I lived my life as a from Jew. I lived my life in the books and the stories of the tzaddikim and the Torah and Svarim, and that is something that wherever I am, I'm not moving from. I don't want to move from it. So that is what I wind up trusting and coming back to. So whatever it is that I'm going to hear will wind up being filtered back
that
through.
In Yiddishkeit there is the idea, like let's say a shaychet. It's not about that they do the shchita right. It's about their character. It's about what they do before, how they prepare. So Chabad is into only their own shchita because they want a specific practice that's done before that. So I'm sort of arguing my point, but I understand the value of like taking juice from everyone without getting wrapped up in what their achanas are.
And then realizing that everybody's going to want to do their own thing and market their own thing. And similar to the money conversation, I mean, look, everybody has every right to feed their families. and feed themselves. So I think for me, understanding that is an element that's in play is smart business. To understand that is an element.
To actually open, and I think collaboration is something I've done for this one. I worked with 4 different practitioners, and on my last retreat, it was wonderful. I think you did that too, right? You had this breathwork person and the other, and just it works wonderful. So instead of becoming the one, and I'm the one, and try to do that thing that had been going on for thousands of years, to rather open and invite. And I think that's another thing. Like, I can look at like competition, let's say, as a threat, or I can really open to medicine and let more medicine in. And it's a very powerful thing for myself and for the people around me.
So what I don't appreciate, again, this is just my opinion, is the commercialization of it. I think once you start making certain things commercial, it's making it commercial. I think there's a certain sanctity in the work finding you when you're ready. And if it speaks to you, it speaks to you. If it doesn't speak to you, it doesn't speak to you. So I think that there's that. There's a commercial, and similar to Torah, where it's like certain things don't need to be commercialized. And it's like, it doesn't have to be, be shoved down.
Yeah, my coach talks of that a lot, that he has a really impressive client book, and a lot of them are like, oh, what we just did, we can totally systemize it. We can do and do so many a year, and so money per each. And then how do we generate? We create what do you call ambassadors, and ambassadors. And he's like, no, he's 13 years doing retreats, not that way. And sometimes people ask me if what I'm doing, was it done successfully in this smaller connecting? And I'm like, yes, I know at least one person. And now I hear of more. Like, I spoke to someone else that knows someone that does a couple of retreats a year, charges, I think it's $7,500 for the on-site. It's part of a bigger program, but that's the number. And no social media, no email marketing, no sales reps, no ambassadors. No, none of it. There's no nice content. It's through connection and years of being enrolled before putting out an offer for money, before charging anything.
I think money is an unbelievable incentive and an incentivizer. I think once it starts being the primary, there can be issues with it. And once it's forgotten, that's when it could also be an issue. Because
on both extremes,
it's an amazing incentivizer in order to create the boundaries of the space. I'm paying a certain money for a service in order to create the boundaries of the space, and that's why they call it, an energy exchange. So I think it's 100% appropriate. But I think once it starts getting lost in what its role is in the dynamic, that's when it's interesting to put something, to take a note out of Teal Swan's book. Again, she's not gospel at all, and there are many flaws and many things wrong with it. But one of the things I remember her saying was that she tries to balance what she offers pro bono and what she charges for. So there winds up being a balance between the two. If you want to charge premium prices, wonderful. But that means that there is something that you have to give. There's something that I have to give. So can I make something available to the masses that still is able to give them a taste of what I'm holding close to and charging, $10,000 for?
That itself was systemized and commercialized. It's called a free exchange, email address exchange, a small ticket entry, medium ticket entry, blah, 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 ticket entry, large. Even that is part of a system right now. And it's so easy to fall for debate. It's like, because it's so easy to fall into I'm charging this much, I'm giving this much, but really I'm not giving anything. I just want to be able to charge a lot.
Is the intention to give medicine, or is the intention to
make money?
To make money.
What's first? It doesn't mean that making money is not. It's very healthy to want to make money. It's just what's first, and that dictates my relationships. That dictates what are my values in my organization. What are my values in my group of friends? What values they hold. If money is primary, my values are very different than medicine primary.
I need to be able to charge this in order to make me available to do this. And I still have what to give, and I gain something out of sharing light into the world. I have light to share. So can I economize aspects of my light? Absolutely. And do I want to make so much of what I want to make available to the masses? Yes. How do I do that? Well, open up a YouTube channel, do podcasts, do something to share that light, because there's a certain blessing that comes in being able to share light just for light's sake.
Yeah, it puts validity to light. If it's always money, then that sort of takes away, it puts a little shadow on it.
Yeah. At the same time, do I also do half an hour to 45-minute conversations that don't lead anywhere to a session? Absolutely. Am I going to stop doing that? Most likely not. Do I enjoy the connection for connection's sake? Absolutely. Now, when I go and have a workshop going on, and do I need to enroll in? And yes, there's that certain, motor that's running. Yes. But at least I'm very much conscientious enough to acknowledge that. I acknowledge that vulnerability. Needing to make money is a vulnerability. Am I willing to accept myself with that vulnerability and trust myself even while I'm accepting that vulnerability, without losing myself in that process in the role of what I'm trying to fill? Because at the end of the day, I want to be human.
Okay, that wraps up that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's a very important piece, I think. So I think that this entire, how to keep a clean heart with work and with empathy work leads into a conversation about narcissism, because specifically empathetic narcissism. Like, I can be empathetic and narcissistic simultaneously. Just because I care, it doesn't mean that I'm not completely self-centered. And I learned this term a couple of years ago, and it really resonated with me. And I understood a lot of relationships I'm in. I understood myself. In narcissism, there's so much content out, and part of me likes it because there is this cleansing of what's right and what's wrong, what's healthy, what's not, what's my fault, what's not. It's beautiful. On the other hand, it's so easy to just title people as a narcissist, and then I don't need to do anything about my own work. And also, the other thing with narcissism is that I think that specifically an empathetic person, the first thing they tell someone when they're upset is that they're a narcissist. Like, the narcissist will call people out on narcissism and then gaslight and I find myself like really not knowing who is who. Michael Landau, who was a mutual friend, and I podcasted with him, said something phenomenal. He said that a term is meant to bill insurance. That's what the term was designed for. The number one reason, so it can be diagnosed and insurance could be billed. So, and the second reason is for one person to help themselves. But what happens today is that everyone is calling everyone names and diagnoses and things, and it really leaves me confused. Is it even valuable?
So I've dealt with a lot of people, and I have my own struggles in relationship to friends and relationship to people. So I'm by no means perfect. And at the same time, I don't think I've ever gained by calling a narcissist a narcissist. I haven't actually gained ground by that. To call them a narcissist to themselves, it's not going to lead, in my opinion, in my experience, it's not going to lead anywhere. It doesn't build anything. Now, to Micah's point, yes, to have a term inside of my head to be able to, in a sense, categorize, I don't want to say label them, more categorize them, then yeah, that to treat myself with a sense of care so I know what I'm dealing with, that winds up being helpful. But it's just like, okay, I have a box that I could relate to them with, and I'm not going to overinvest or commit in a certain way because I don't have that sense of trust with them. Now, have I said to a person like, well, that's rather narcissistic? Yes. Have I said that in anger? Yes. Now, I think one of the things I find for myself is that I'll keep on checking myself. Well, am I the narcissist? Am I the narcissist? Am I the narcissist? Like, and it's a little bit of soul searching, because realizing that yes, I have narcissistic behaviors. There are parts of me that are extremely self-serving. There are parts of me that enjoy power and delusions of grandeur. But when I asked my Rebbe, I'm like, who says I'm the one to do all these things? It's like, maybe I'm not big enough to, help people. And he would answer, it's like, specifically because you're having that question is the reason why you are the one that's meant to help. Is that reassuring? No, but it kind of gives me permission. It gives me a little bit more permission to build connections.
So I struggle with that. So first of all, you said a few things right now, like you say, unpacking. You said a few really big things. First of all, I'm going to start with the last. I can truly appreciate sharing what goes through in your head. I resonate with that. I do it all the time, and I specifically struggle with that thought. Am I the narcissist in this dynamic?
I mean, there's other colorful ways of saying that sentence, but
yeah.
Fill in the blanks.
So I can truly appreciate the share, because I think about it quite often, and I think that's exactly the confusion with this specific topic. On one hand, I so deeply appreciate that there's some influencers that's their niche, and some of them are really solid. I know on Instagram there's this one doctor, therapist, wise woman. She's phenomenal. All she talks about is narcissism, what it does, what happens, what it leaves scars, how forgiveness works. Bam, bam, solid. And every time I think to my head that someone is a narcissist, I feel narcissistic. Every single time I do that. So I call someone out in my own head, in conversation or not, doesn't matter. But as soon as my brain moves to the mindset of this is what they are, I instantly feel that yuck. Which then I've also been explained that the fact that I check myself means I don't follow the full spectrum of that. But it's like, I don't know what to do with it. It's like, on one hand, it's valuable. And on the other hand, it puts me in a low frequency, judgy,
I think it's also appreciating that we all have these narcissistic tendencies, and that's part of what makes us human. We all have these, little children are narcissists. It's all about them all the time, and it's just what they're feeling and all they want. Now we grow out of it. I try to grow up and allow empathy and compassion and growth and thinking outside of myself. So yeah, in terms of an empathic narcissist, which is to be able to understand and comprehend another person's emotions, but uses them for self-serving behaviors. Yes, there are some narcissists who are extremely empathic. So I think it's a question when I'm working with a client or when I'm with my wife, am I just taking them to where I want them to be, or am I just allowing them to be themselves? And and sometimes it can be both. Sometimes it can be both.
Yeah, I think it comes nicely back to vulnerability. If I'm willing to feel vulnerable, at the end it'll be about them, because I'm not protecting myself.
5 signs you are dealing with an empathic narcissist. 1, apparent insightfulness. I definitely have that. 2, underhanded superiority. I most definitely have that. 3, hypersensitivity to criticism. Most definitely. I mean, maybe less. 4, victim mentality. 5, covert manipulation. So I guess I am.
And besides the fact that you're Googling it, just saying.
I think there's also a willingness to see yourself. A lot of narcissistic people that I have a certain refusal of looking in the mirror.
Right. I think what happened with ADHD is that it used to be an illness, and it became something that I can actually work with. And maybe narcissism can head there one day, because my real question about this topic was so much narcissism talk is about outcasting and becoming allergic to certain patterns, which is really good. It's really not saying any of it is like, it really depends where a person is at. And yet the pandemic of the generation is known to be loneliness, less in the Heimische communities because there's so much going on. But as a whole, if we look in the Western world, specifically in the US, loneliness is a real thing, because as soon as someone says something that triggers gaslighting or guilt or shame or discomfort, it's like, okay, they're out, I'm back alone, I'm back alone, I'm back alone. My question was like, what's the vision? Like, it's good to it's good to put boundaries. But if a narcissist listens to all of this narcissist stuff and Googles the terms, what can they do for themselves? Like, how can they actually? It's like this person that I met, that I remember her name, but on Instagram, she talks about it so much and very little. She doesn't talk to the narcissist. She talks to the empath that's struggling in a narcissistic relationship. I'm sure that the narcissist within me, I know, and you just Googled and checked yourself. Okay, so what does one do when they listen to this stuff? How can they help themselves?
So I looked before our talk, I think, and then don't quote me because I may be wrong, because it was just quick little mini research, but I think it definitely requires in-depth. There's a lot of assumptions that of things before the narcissist actually like seeks out therapy and seeks out help and seeks out to like work on it. So there needs to be an acknowledgement of what's going on, and then it's like going to a therapist that actually knows what they're doing when it comes to it. And many therapists have no idea what they're doing, what this realm. It is a realm. It's a realm of expertise.
It's a world.
It's a whole world. Not only that, a lot of divorce mediators don't really get that. Rabbanim don't really get that. It takes a certain head to be able to hold complexity, to realize that yes, this person is like that. It doesn't make them a bad person. Narcissists aren't necessarily bad people. They could be extremely immature, self-serving, manipulative people that don't see themselves, but they're not bad. And I think for me, that was a big realization. Not all narcissists are bad. That doesn't mean that they're not narcissists. And in order to grow, it takes a ton of work. It really, really takes a ton of work. I'm remembering one person, until you got them out of their head enough to really take a look in the mirror and to realize, what am I supposed to do right now? Then it becomes a lot of walking through mud. How do I come out of myself? How do I develop practices to come out of myself? It's not my specialty, so I don't know. But I know it takes a lot of work. And some people just won't change.
The willingness to re-engage and look and re-engage and look at these shadow parts, at the bad feelings, at the sad, at the judgments.
And then realizing so much of me doing that is so my wife stays with me, because I don't want to be that divorced guy, and I don't want to shatter my entire life.
Which is okay. Like, self-serving doesn't instantly mean that it's okay.
Correct.
It's a really good reason to start checking myself. It's like, when this relationship goes to hell and the other one,
to what end am I there with my wife? So then, am I ever actually going? I don't know. I'm thinking on that. Am I actually ever going to have a compassionate, vulnerable, accepting relationship with my wife?
And the way to sort of dissolve these patterns is through just re-engaging with reality and with what's at hand over and over and over. I think it's long term.
And the reason why there's so much content in terms of dealing with the narcissist is because usually if the narcissist is not the one, listening to this content.
Right.
They're not looking it up. They're not going into the mirror.
There's so much. Like, anyone scrolling social media will, I don't know, maybe it's the algorithm.
But what is the instinct then? If the instinct is not to look at myself because I have such a fragile ego.
Right. So that's the other thing that happens, that everyone around me are narcissists all of a sudden. And that's true for both, for the empath, the empathetic, not narcissist, or even with traits, but not diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder, will find themselves surrounded with narcissists. And then the narcissist will think that they're surrounded with narcissists.
Don't forget, there's a whole covert narcissist. There's the victim narcissist.
Yeah.
Where they're getting off of like, that woe is me. That woe is me, waiting for there to be some kind of for something to happen.
Like a rescue.
Yeah. I forgot who said it. I think it was Dr. Ramani, who, again, that's one of the Bibles.
Oh, that's the one that I was talking about.
So you're on Instagram, I'm on YouTube with her. I've been listening to her for years.
I got
No,
it.
her, I'll just go and go and go and go and go. Again, because there's a strength in words, and I appreciate words, and she has an ability to put words to certain things.
Yeah.
The codependent, if I'm with the narcissist enough, if I'm codependent to the narcissist enough, the codependent will eventually become the narcissist.
Yes. And then that's gaslit and used against me, and I'm actually wrong. And because I'm empathetic, I'm going to take it.
Another thing, I think Teal Sweat said this. A lot of people look at the codependent as the victim and the narcissist as the perpetrator. Now, what Peterson is going to say is that, I'm saying big names here, that looking at things as a perpetrator-victim dynamic, as this guy is bad, this guy is good, this guy's the victim, this guy is the abuser, is an extremely primitive way of looking at things. It is an extremely primitive way of looking at things. Most relationships are not just, standard relationships. One guy is not just the abuser and the other guy is just the victim. And the victim is not necessarily innocent.
Well, we know this about enabling addiction. We know this very well. And we know this because the question goes like, really? You didn't know? 25 years? Really? It's like, let's talk about what didn't happen at home, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess the step forward is to take responsibility, regardless of the diagnosis, of the term, of the name. It's like when I take responsibility, I start moving.
I think it's a continuous invitation to responsibility, a continuous relationship to how do I acknowledge the vulnerability of the madness that's actually going on, to acknowledge my part in it without actually rationalizing why it's them and not me. I think that's an ongoing question that I have is, where am I in this? What is my part in it? How am I fueling the fire?
What can I do to change that within myself and in my life?
I mean, I don't think we have to go into this so much, but there are certain people that have wanted to work with me. And it's hard. I won't necessarily work with them because I'm not to navigate their mindscape and trying to line up the ducks in order to see, well, how can I look in the mirror, to line up the ducks to a point where they look in the mirror, to line up the ducks until they point at the mirror. A lot of people are defensive. A lot of people don't want to do it. A lot of people are so used to just looking at other things. So it's kitzer.
Yeah, I like as a really, really good takeaway point on all of these topics. It's and something I really learned recently. I looked up attachment disorders. Mm-hmm. The coach looking at the big boy, the big degrees and terms, and they're valuable, I think, sometimes to just put things in order. So I looked up attachment disorders and I learned a whole bunch about RAD, a rapid attachment disorder, which is the flip side of running away from relationship. It's to engage in intense relationships, and was very insightful. And what I came to understanding, and it's really helpful for me in my life, is the ability to hold a complex emotion is the way through. The ability to be with a complex emotion is the gateway to something different in the future, specifically in relationships. So they said, so I thought, so I interpreted, so they meant it, they didn't mean it. Before I resolve any of it, if I can sit with the complex emotion, I'm a whole other thing.
But wait till you hear what they did.
Yeah, and then that brings up another round. And another round. That's what life might do until the Mashiach ben David shows up on the horse and we're all, until that day, this is going to keep happening. And then it's the anti-Semitism, and then it's this war, and then it's the financial crash, and then it's rapid, easy money. And there's always something that creates this heavy emotion, competition, medicine, psychedelics, integration, the downer, the upper.
I mean, one thing that I think we should say is that we, in this work, and I think you've found it, and I found it, and I think we're just going to name it, is that it's very easy to become narcissistic once I've become aware of certain things. Meaning, if I'm doing, I read this meme once from Rachel Sessions. Just because you do ayahuasca does not make you a good person. Being a good person makes you a good person. Doing ayahuasca just means that you're someone doing ayahuasca. So it's very easy, especially doing things like healing work, breath work, psychedelics, that you get lost in this narcissistic bubble. And I think Eliana said the pink cloud of sobriety, where that's the only thing that's going on, that also is narcissistic. And so it's important to actually understand that once I'm high on my own supply, once I think that this is all that there is, and that I am somehow, quote unquote, I have these delusions of grandeur that I am better or I'm more conscious. For me, the intention of this work is to make me more humble. And yes, I understand the delusions of grandeur inside of myself, and I've seen it, and I've watched my own, narcissist rear its ugly head time and time again. I think it's also just really important to realize that doing this work does not mean that you don't have narcissistic tendencies. Doing this work means that you are willing to look into the mirror and see it, and see how it rears its ugly head. I have these dark personality traits. I have an inner sadist. I have an inner addict. I have an inner malevolent one. And part of this work is to shine light at it and elevate it.
Yeah.
And really to elevate it by being able to shine the light on it.
Yeah, I love Rabbi Jacobson for this message. Like to not to really look at the shadow and give it light and love and acceptance and work it, not be it. Like spend so much energy on that's not me. What if it is? And what am I going to do about it? And every day show up to that question and do one little thing towards another, a little one layer forward with it in my light and in my functionality. I guess I feel heavy with certain of these topics because I brought up narcissism. I don't like to dive in. It just feels sticky. Like I said, every time I judge someone as narcissistic, I think, oh, I'm it. So if there's something you can leave us with this conversation, like just a closing point, a blessing, a point, a vision.
I think once I break that fragile ego, I realize that there is a tremendous depth to it. Once I breathe through or break through, once I'm bokeh that mask, there's grief and there's beauty and there's love and there's just another human. So, and it's realizing that yes, underneath it all is just another human. That's why you could have the most narcissistic type of person, or a person that's very much in their own thing. You hit them at certain pressure points and then they breathe through it. Doesn't mean that they're going to be healed, but they have these moments of genuine, sincere vulnerability where it's like that poor little child of, I don't know where to go. I don't know what else to do. So it's like there is that sense of compassion that you can have for that person. Because once if you're awake enough and you see that, like, no, there's that mask, and if you peel back, and all that it is this little boy that really doesn't know how to do anything else, then fine. I'm not talking about the malevolent one. I'm not talking about the psychopath. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking specifically about the fragile ego of the narcissist, where underneath it, there's this lost little boy and girl that have no idea what to do with. So either you feel that compassion, or at the very least you feel a sense of pity. I know someone, I don't know if it's BPD or narcissism, one of the two. I feel pity. I'm far enough where I could feel pity. I'm not in it, where I'm not wrapped up in it in the slightest. It's more extended. It's far off, but I have a sense of pity, and I look up and say, this is your creation, you deal with it.
Yeah, and I can pray. That's a nice place to go to really pray, rather than get wrapped up in the judgment.
Yeah.
Pray. I think that can start a whole new conversation.
Did that help with that heavy?
Yeah, that's nice.
Real.
Nice. Okay, so I maybe another closing point is, with all that's happening and all these different modalities and years of work that you've been doing, what's your current, I guess, gift or vision that you bring to your circles?
I think it's a trust and knowing that I'm on the journey too, and I'm looking for it too. There was once I was on a family constellations workshop, and the person facilitating, said that he was out of it. And I looked at him, and I'd already done my fair share of circle stuff. I said, "There is no I'm out of it. All right, you're a part of it just as much. You're in it as much as all of us are in it." So I think what I appreciate about myself is that I'm in it too. Yes, there is a part of my, I have 1 foot in and 1 foot out, and I'm holding a certain sense of consciousness and space and safety and, experience and expertise. But I'm also
one of the people.
I'm also just as human, if not more. And I'm not coming in that I'm better or that I got it or to explain to you what your issues are. I could explain to you patterns that I see. If you could take it, tweak it, drop it, do whatever you want with it. But like, these are certain patterns that kind of make sense to me. And I think with all the background work that I do is that we're not doing psychedelics, but I most definitely have a psychedelic mind where, I'm fully confident that I'm the craziest guy in the circle. Somebody said this workshop, instead of going deep dark, go deep light. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, I remember when we spoke of it years ago, we spoke of doing the work from the light. And I think it's reached that place in many ways.
I definitely know how to do deep dark. I'm trying deep light, or at least looking at the deep dark from the deep light. Because if I'm doing that, it's like I'm not so wrapped up in the drama, and it's there's a lot more flow and movement, and there's also a lot of laughter. I've laughed a lot in the last couple of days, and just the genuine laughter. And again, it's deep, dark, serious, boot camp, silence, and been there in it. Very important, very admirable. And there's something to laugh and make a little bit of a fool of yourself and make a mistake and laugh at yourself in the process. So I brought humanity, a lot more humanity to the roles I used to fill, and realizing that I'm just as human and just as flawed.
Thank you, Mo.